He walked into court for a business deal, nothing more. But just outside, 4 little girls sat on a bench, cold, quiet, forgotten. Then one whispered, "We're hungry." He froze. He came for contracts, but those 3 words cracked something open, and the man who once felt nothing began to feel everything. Before we begin, if this kind of story speaks to your heart, feel free to share where you're watching from. It's always beautiful to see how far stories like this can travel. Graham Whitman was a man known for precision. At 41, the Denver real estate mogul moved through life like clockwork, board meetings, timed to the minute, contracts signed by the hour, and days carved into blocks of efficiency. On that particular Tuesday morning, dressed in his signature navy wool coat and tailored slacks, he arrived at the Denver County Courthouse with one objective: finalize the zoning approval for a luxury high-rise his firm was set to break ground on. The meeting was scheduled for 10:15 sharp. He expected to be in and out in 20 minutes max. The courthouse buzzed with quiet urgency. Lawyers whispered over paperwork. Clerks shuffled files between courtrooms, and the air was thick with institutional sterility, paper, sweat, and time ticking away under fluorescent light. Graham barely noticed. His mind was already on the next project, the next investor call, the next carefully controlled outcome. But then he saw them. 4 little girls sat side by side on a hard wooden bench outside courtroom 4B. Their legs dangled above the floor, their clothes mismatched and too thin for the crisp Colorado air that followed people indoors this time of year. 2 wore faded jackets. The other 2 had no coats at all. All 4 had pale blonde hair, mostly uncombed, and strikingly blue eyes that stared straight ahead without truly seeing. No toys, no snacks, no adult. Graham slowed to a stop, confusion wrinkling the space between his brows. Children didn't belong in courtrooms. Not like this. He walked over slowly, crouching slightly so he wasn't looming over them. "Hey there," he said gently. "Are you lost?" One of the girls, who wore a purple hoodie with a tear in the sleeve, looked up. Her voice was soft, but firm. "No, sir. We're waiting." "For who?" "Our mom. She's in court." Graham scanned the hallway. Dozens of adults passed lawyers, clients, janitors, but no one even glanced at the girls. "How long have you been waiting?" The smallest one shrugged. "A while." Then the girl in the purple hoodie added, almost in a whisper, "We're hungry." 3 words. That was all it took. Graham felt something tighten in his chest. It wasn't pity. It was something older, deeper, a buried ache from a time when his older sister, May, used to walk him home from school and pretend saltine crackers were a feast. She'd gone hungry more nights than she let on. He knew that now. Without another word, he stood and left the courthouse. 15 minutes later, he returned with 2 large brown paper bags. Sandwiches, apples, juice boxes, warm muffins. He handed them over one by one. The girls didn't pounce on the food. They opened the bags carefully, passed items around, and ate with a strange kind of discipline, methodical, respectful, like they'd done this before. Graham sat down beside them. "They teach you to share like that?" he asked after a while. "No," said the tallest girl. "We just do." They ate quietly. Occasionally, one of them would tuck a strand of hair behind the other's ear or wipe crumbs off a little sister's chin. They didn't ask who he was or why he was helping. They didn't act like kids used to adults showing up for them. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl in the purple hoodie answered, "Emma." She pointed to her sisters. "That's Lily, Harper, and Sophie." "And your mom?" "She's in trouble," Emma said matter-of-factly. "What kind of trouble?" "She works for a man who says she stole his watch, but she didn't." Graham blinked. "How do you know?" "She told us," said Harper. "And Mama never lies." He leaned back on the bench, staring at the nameplate on courtroom 4B. His phone buzzed, his assistant, probably wondering where he was. But Graham didn't check it. He couldn't. Something in this moment felt heavier than the zoning case waiting inside. "I'm Graham," he said eventually. "Graham Whitman." Emma nodded solemnly, then passed him the last muffin from the bag. "You didn't eat. You can have this one." He took it, but didn't unwrap it. Instead, he looked at the four girls, and something in him cracked softly, but permanently. He had come to court for business. But these girls, quiet, polite, unseen, had become his business, and he wasn't leaving until he knew they were okay. The door to courtroom 4B creaked open as though even it were exhausted by what had transpired inside. Anna Ray stepped into the hallway, clutching a worn manila folder to her chest, the edges dog-eared from anxious hands and too many sleepless nights. Her black flats were scuffed. The hem of her thrifted blouse tugged loose from the waistband of slacks that had seen better years. But her chin was high, her walk steady, even if every step seemed powered by sheer will. The moment she cleared the door, her eyes darted left, then right, urgently searching the hallway. Then she saw them, four girls, lined up like sparrows on a bench. Her girls. Her breath caught, equal parts relief and confusion washing over her. They weren't just okay, they were smiling, eating, and sitting next to a man in an expensive coat. Anna's spine straightened. Her pace slowed, controlled. Every instinct in her flared protection first, questions later. "Mama," Sophie waved, juice box in hand. "He got us sandwiches." The stranger stood as Anna approached, moving with the easy grace of a man who never had to rush for anything. His features were hard square jaw, light stubble, steel blue eyes that didn't flinch, but his posture wasn't threatening. Respectful, maybe even a little apologetic. "I didn't mean to overstep," he said, voice calm. "They told me they were hungry. I couldn't just walk away." Anna looked from him to the empty wrappers, to her daughters, who looked fuller, calmer than they had that morning. Her shoulders relaxed by degrees. "You fed them?" He nodded. "I was here for something else. Saw them alone. It didn't feel right." Anna tightened her grip on the folder in her hands, the paper edges biting into her palm. "Thank you, I didn't expect this." "You're welcome," he said, then offered a faint, disarming smile. "Graham Whitman." The name sparked something familiar but unplaceable. She didn't show it. Anna Ray. He didn't offer a handshake, just pulled a business card from his wallet and handed it over. "No pressure, but if you need anything at all, call. I don't like what I saw today." Anna took the card but didn't glance at it. She'd been handed plenty of cards in her life shelters, lawyers, overburdened nonprofits. Most of them led nowhere. Still, this man didn't look like the kind who did things halfway. "I appreciate it," she said, cautious but sincere. Emma stood up beside her. "He sat with us the whole time, Mama. Didn't even look at his phone." Anna's expression softened, just slightly. "That's rare these days." He gave a small nod. "So, I've been told." She gathered the girls and turned to leave. "Come on, girls, we've got a bus to catch." Graham watched as the four of them moved down the hall like a little fleet, Emma leading, Lily and Harper in the middle, Sophie skipping behind. No one else in the courthouse paid them any mind, but he couldn't stop watching, not even when they turned the corner and disappeared. That night, in his penthouse perched 27 stories above downtown Denver, Graham Whitman poured himself a glass of whiskey he didn't really want and sat in the soft lamplight of his study. The view behind him glittered with city lights, but his focus was on the laptop screen in front of him, Anna Ray. The search brought up almost nothing. No social media, no news hits. Just a dated job listing at a property management firm and a court docket from earlier that morning. State of Colorado versus Anna Ray. Theft, first degree. The plaintiff, Victor Dane. Graham stared at the name, jaw clenching. He didn't know Victor Dane personally, but he'd heard enough. CEO of Dane Holdings, a mid-level commercial real estate company with a reputation for chewing through employees like disposable razors. Dane's name had come up once at a charity board meeting. He'd donated just enough to stay visible, just enough to appear polished. Rumors swirled beneath the surface. HR complaints swept under the rug, sudden terminations, NDA enforced silence. Nothing provable. But Graham had learned a long time ago that where there's smoke, there's often a rich man with a fire extinguisher. He opened the court documents. According to the complaint, Anna Ray was accused of stealing a watch, an imported Swiss model valued at over $10,000 from Victor Dane's office. Her employment had been terminated without formal notice, and the charges filed just days later. There was no camera footage mentioned, no witness, just Dane's word. He clicked into the court transcripts, what little had been logged so far. Her court-appointed attorney had barely asked any questions, no cross-examination worth noting. Anna hadn't spoken beyond her plea of not guilty. Graham leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. The girl's eyes flashed in his memory, blue, tired, old, in a way children's eyes should never be. He knew what this was. A rich man saying, "She stole from me," and a woman with no money, no power, no connections, just trying to feed her kids. The scales weren't just unbalanced, they were rigged. He closed the laptop and looked down at his chest pocket. The card Emma had slipped him, the napkin folded like a heart. He unfolded it again, slowly. In pink crayon, the words, "Thank you for lunch." Graham wasn't a man who made rash decisions, but some things didn't need a calendar alert or investor memo. Some things just needed doing. And in that moment, he decided Anna Ray wouldn't go through this alone. The apartment complex on 6th and Osage looked like it had given up trying to keep up appearances. Rusted stair rails, peeling paint, mailboxes stuffed with unopened flyers. Graham stood on the cracked concrete steps for a moment, adjusting his collar against the chill before climbing to the second floor. He carried 2 grocery bags in one hand and a sense of uncertainty in the other. Apartment 2B. He knocked lightly. The door creaked open. Anna stood there, barefoot in worn jeans and an oversized flannel, her hair tied back in a loose knot. Her eyes widened slightly at the sight of him. "You found us." "You gave me a name," Graham replied. "I used it." Anna hesitated, eyeing the bags. "I brought dinner. Nothing fancy. Just some things I thought you and the girls could use." She hesitated again, longer this time, then stepped back. "They're at the community center, homework club. You want to come in?" He entered cautiously, scanning the small living room. Mismatched furniture, blank walls, a coffee table covered in crayons, papers, and a chipped tea mug. The place wasn't messy, just tired. Every item seemed secondhand, every corner patched instead of replaced. He set the bags on the kitchen counter and turned toward her. "I looked into Victor Dane." Anna crossed her arms. "Let me guess, nothing sticks to him." "Not officially," Graham admitted, "but he's not clean. He's got a trail of NDA agreements a mile long. Female employees who left abruptly. Hushed HR complaints. There's a pattern, and it matches what you said." Anna's jaw tightened. "That doesn't prove anything, not in court." "No, but it's enough to start something." She sat down heavily at the edge of the couch. "What's your angle, Graham? Why are you really doing this?" He paused, unsure how to explain something he hadn't quite put into words himself. "Because I can, and because your daughters shouldn't have to sit on a courthouse bench wondering where their next meal's coming from." Her gaze softened, barely, but the steel never left. "I'm not a cause, and I'm not charity." "I know," he said quietly. "You're a mother who deserves better than what's happening to you." Anna looked away for a long moment, then nodded once. "All right, but we do this on my terms." He didn't smile, just met her gaze and said, "Agreed." 2 days later, Graham returned, not with groceries, but with Jordan Reyes. Jordan was in her early 40s, sharp as glass, but warmer than most people expected. She wore no-nonsense heels and carried a leather case worn from courtroom battles. A former federal prosecutor turned civil rights attorney, she'd taken more than one high-profile retaliation case against powerful employers. Graham trusted her with his investments, and more importantly, with people. Anna was skeptical. "I can't pay you." Jordan just smiled. "That's okay. I'm already paid. Graham handles my retainers." "I don't want to owe anyone," Anna said flatly. "You won't," Jordan replied. "You'll earn this by standing up." That was the start of something. Jordan dug into the case like a surgeon. She requested discovery materials. She filed paperwork to halt the proceedings until evidence could be re-examined. And quietly, behind the scenes, Graham's own legal team compiled a dossier on Victor Dane internal exit memos, leaked employee reviews, anonymous testimonies from former interns. What they found was damning. Victor had built a culture of silence, not overt harassment, but coercion. Promises, veiled threats, Late-night meetings behind closed doors. More than one woman had been blacklisted from the industry after refusing his mentorship. It was a system that protected him at every level. Graham watched it unfold from both ends, boardroom calls in the morning, quiet dinners with Anna and the girls at night. He never pushed too hard, he just showed up. For a while, it worked, until it didn't. The first article dropped on a Thursday. Millionaire's courthouse charity case, or secret family. It was accompanied by a grainy photo of Graham on the courthouse steps with Anna and the girls. The piece speculated on his mysterious interest in a woman with no connection to his business, questioned the optics of their late-night meetings, and all but accused Anna of manipulating him for financial gain. By Friday, there were 3 more blogs echoing the same insinuation. Saturday morning, Anna didn't answer her door. It wasn't until Sunday night that Graham saw her again, storming toward him as he stepped out of his building's private garage, her face flushed, fists clenched around a crumpled tabloid. "They printed our names, my girls' faces, my apartment building," she said, her voice shaking with fury. "My neighbors think I'm sleeping with a billionaire to get out of court." Graham opened his mouth, but she cut him off. "You said no strings. You said I'd be safe." "I didn't leak anything, Anna." "I know that," she snapped. Then quieter, "But it doesn't matter. You showing up, it made us a target." "I'll fix it." "No," she said. "You can't." Her eyes glistened. "I'm not going to let them turn my daughters into some clickbait side story." She handed back his business card, the corners soft and bent now. "We're done." Graham stood frozen as she turned and walked away, her pace tight and fast. The headlines had turned a simple act of kindness into scandal, and the woman he wanted to protect most had just shut the door. But deep down, Graham knew one thing for certain. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a war. Graham Whitman didn't chase, not people, not deals that collapsed under pressure. In business, when a door shut, he found another one, or built a new one entirely. But with Anna, he couldn't just move on. Not after what he saw in those girls' eyes. Not after hearing, "We're done," with more pain than anger. So he kept his distance, because that's what she asked for. But it didn't stop him from wondering every day how they were doing. Weeks passed. He'd look up from his boardroom window and think about whether Emma was still leading her sisters like a quiet general, whether Harper was still chewing her pencil when she got nervous, whether Sophie still tucked crumbs into her sleeve for later, whether Lily, so small, so quiet, was sleeping okay at night. He told himself he was just being cautious, respectful, that if she needed help, she'd call. But the truth was crueler. She wasn't going to call, because in her eyes, getting close to him had put her daughters in the crosshairs. And Graham could not argue with that. He buried himself in work. He met investors, approved new permits, sat through presentations about downtown expansions. His assistant, Cheryl, noted how he'd become quieter than usual, less impatient, more distracted. One Thursday morning, Graham arrived at his downtown office just before sunrise, as he often did. The building was still quiet, lobby lights dim to half power. As he approached the glass door to his private suite, he stopped in his tracks. Something was taped to it, a piece of construction paper, crinkled, a little weather-stained, a drawing in crayon, 4 little girls, stick figures with blonde curls and colored dresses, a tall man next to them, and next to him, a woman with brown hair and long eyelashes. Above their heads, a large heart, and inside the heart, one word, family. He stared at it for a long time. Then slowly, he reached out, took it down, and walked inside. He closed the door behind him, set the drawing on his desk, and sat down in the chair. And for the first time in over 20 years, Graham Whitman cried, not the quiet, dignified tears of a man who'd learned how to grieve in silence, but full, gut-wrenching sobs, the kind that cracked through the armor he'd spent his entire adult life building. The kind he hadn't let himself feel since the night he buried his sister May and stood alone outside the funeral home wondering what came next. When it passed, he wiped his face on his sleeve, looked at the drawing again, and whispered, "They came here." It wasn't a declaration, it was disbelief, wonder, hope. Somehow, even after all that had happened, one of those girls, or maybe all of them, had come to find him. had remembered him, had trusted him enough to leave something behind. That night, Graham didn't go home. He didn't order takeout, didn't answer emails. He sat in his office under the soft hum of the city, with a legal pad in front of him and the drawing pinned beside his monitor. And he started to write. Dear Anna, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you'll tear it up the moment you see my name. But I need you to know something. I didn't help your girls because I felt sorry for you. I helped them because I saw myself in them. And I stayed because I saw something I lost a long time ago. Kindness that didn't expect anything in return. You told me once that kindness always has strings. Maybe that's true in your world. But it shouldn't be. Not when it's real. I don't want anything from you. No gratitude. No forgiveness. I just need you to know. I can't forget the look on your face when you realized someone had helped your daughters without asking for anything back. You looked relieved and terrified, and like maybe for a second, you wanted to believe I was different. I wish I had done more to protect that belief. Graham. The next week, he sent another letter, then another, every Sunday night. He didn't text, didn't call, just wrote. He told her about his sister May, how she raised him after their parents were killed in a wreck when he was 12, how she worked at a diner and went to community college at night, how one day she didn't wake up. He wrote about the years that followed, the sleeping in cars, the shelters, the mentor who gave him his first real job and taught him how to sell, how that fire to survive became a fortress, how he lost sight of who he used to be until 4 small girls on a courthouse bench broke something open in him again. He wrote about Victor Dane, how his investigators were still digging, how the paper trail was messier than they'd hoped, but real. He sent no expectations, no return address, just the truth, 1 letter every week, and still no reply. But every time he signed his name, sealed the envelope, and dropped it in the night box, he felt like maybe, just maybe, she would read it, and maybe the heart in that crayon drawing would stay open, even if just a crack. The return wasn't dramatic, no orchestral swell, no sudden spotlight. Just a woman walking into a place that once made her feel small. Only this time, she held her chin a little higher. It had been nearly 3 months since Anna Ray last stepped foot into the courthouse. The memory of that bench, of Graham, of the girl's hands clutching sandwiches while the world passed them by, it haunted her. But time, she'd discovered, had a way of dulling pain just enough to allow movement. She hadn't answered any of Graham's letters at first. She kept them in a shoebox under her bed, unopened, unread, but never thrown out. Then one rainy afternoon, she caved. She opened one, and another, and another. The 4th one made her cry, not because it asked for anything, but because it didn't. There were no apologies layered with expectation, just truth, just memory, just a man deeply flawed, endlessly careful trying to reach someone who didn't want to be touched. She finished all 12 letters in a single night. Now, here she was again, denim jacket too thin for the spring wind, nerves pulsing beneath her steady posture. Her daughters were waiting at home with Miss Lorna, their neighbor, who had offered to babysit once she heard what Anna was doing. Get your justice, the old woman had whispered. Your girls already know you're brave. Now show the world. Anna climbed the courthouse steps, one at a time. When she reached the landing outside room 4B, her breath hitched. He was there. Graham Whitman. Leaning against the same wall, holding a large brown paper bag in one hand, the other shoved deep in his coat pocket. His hair was longer now, more tousled than slick. And for the first time, he wasn't wearing a tie. He looked up, and he smiled, not wide, not expectant, just a quiet smile that held no assumptions, only hope. I brought enough for everyone, he said, lifting the bag slightly. Anna stared at him for a second, then let out the smallest laugh. Still with the sandwiches, huh? Seemed to work last time. She nodded slowly. I read them, she said. Graham's posture shifted subtly. All of them? All 12. And the postcard you stuck in the last one with the doodle of the stick figures. You're a terrible artist. I was aiming for charmingly bad. Anna crossed her arms. So, you still chasing ghosts? Just one, he said softly, and I think she's finally starting to look over her shoulder. She smiled faintly, but then her voice turned serious. If we do this, Graham, if I let you help, it's on my terms. I don't want a white knight. I don't want pity. I won't be rescued. His response was immediate. I'm not here to save you, Anna. I'm here to stand beside you. A pause. I won't be saved, she repeated. Just heard. He nodded. That's all I've ever wanted for you. They stood in silence for a moment, the old courthouse buzz flowing around them. Then the door to room 4B opened and Jordan Reyes, the civil rights attorney Graham had introduced her to, stepped out. Trim suit, fierce eyes, and a voice like thunder in court. Anna, he said, you ready? Anna looked between him and Graham, then down at the folder in her hands. I am now. Inside, the courtroom had changed little. Same stained wood benches, same flickering overhead light, same judge, though she looked more alert this time. Maybe the paperwork Graham had pushed forward through channels most people didn't even know existed had sparked something. But the biggest change wasn't in the room. It was in Anna. She sat at the plaintiff's table beside Jordan, back straight, hands folded. She didn't tremble. She didn't look at the door for an exit. She was here, fully, and Victor Dane was not. His attorney appeared instead, requesting a delay, citing scheduling conflicts. But what they didn't know, what Graham's team had been working on for weeks, was that a former paralegal from Dane's firm had agreed to testify. Her name was Lindsay Clark. She had once worked directly under Dane. She'd signed an NDA. But after seeing Anna's story in the headlines and the way Graham Whitman had stood behind her, she'd reached out to Jordan quietly. She had emails. She had calendar entries. She had enough to make noise. Today was just the start. When the judge ruled to reopen the investigation and formally allow the countersuit and harassment claims, Anna didn't cheer. She simply exhaled. It was the sound of a woman who had been holding her breath for far too long. Outside the courtroom, Jordan shook Graham's hand and said, You're not a lawyer, but you move like one. Graham shrugged. I've had good reason to learn fast. Anna leaned against the courthouse wall, her hands jammed into her jacket pockets. This isn't over. I know, Graham replied. There's still a lot to risk. I'll be here through all of it. She studied him for a moment, then looked down at the paper bag still in his hand. What kind? Turkey, no mayo, just how Emma ordered it last time. Anna smirked. You remember that? I remember everything. She shook her head, smiling despite herself. All right then, she said. Let's fight. The courthouse was buzzing before the sun had fully risen. Camera crews stationed outside. Reporters huddled at the front steps, microphones prepped. Inside, courtroom 4B had never seen a crowd like this. Press, advocates, curious onlookers, and former colleagues gathered, sensing something bigger than a typical civil suit. This was power on trial, and for once, it wasn't on the winning side. Graham arrived early, dressed simply in a charcoal suit with no tie. He didn't sit in the front with Anna's legal team. He found a spot in the last row and kept his hands folded, his jaw set tight. He didn't want to be a distraction. He just wanted to be there. Anna entered shortly after, with Jordan Reyes beside her. She wore a slate blue blouse, pressed slacks, and her hair pulled back in a way that framed her face with quiet strength. She didn't walk like a victim. She walked like a woman who'd carried too much for too long and had decided to lay it down, one truth at a time. Victor Dane arrived with a legal entourage 3 lawyers deep. He wore arrogance like cologne thick, smug, choking. But even he couldn't ignore the flash of cameras or the shift in murmurs when Anna took her place at the stand. Jordan began with a timeline, laying out Anna's employment, the accusations, and the aftermath. Then came the evidence. Internal memos from Victor's firm suggesting a pattern of female staff abruptly resigning after HR reviews. Then digital records, emails from Victor to Anna late at night, laced with just enough ambiguity to be inappropriate, and one particularly damning message. I thought we had an understanding. Turning cold doesn't suit you. The courtroom fell silent. Then Lauren Chase was called, the former paralegal from Victor's firm. Her testimony, though delivered with visible nerves, was damning. She described the same behavior, compliments that became coercion, mentorship that turned into manipulation. She hadn't spoken publicly before, but when she looked across the courtroom and saw Anna her daughters in the gallery, something in her voice strengthened. He told me no one would believe me, that he'd bury me in legal threats. I believed him, until now. Anna's turn came. Jordan stood beside her as she took the stand, heart pounding so loudly she thought the microphone might pick it up. She spoke of her work ethic, the pride she took in every night shift, the discomfort she tried to dismiss as imagination until it escalated. She didn't cry. Her voice wavered once, but she caught it. I didn't come here to ruin a man, she said. I came here because my daughters needed to know their mother told the truth, even when it hurt, even when it was hard. In the back row, Graham closed his eyes. He had faced dozens of boardrooms, spoken before investors, with billions on the line, but nothing had ever gripped his chest the way Anna's words did. Victor's defense tried to discredit her. They called her emotional, implied financial motive, waved around her income level like it was proof of dishonesty. But the courtroom didn't buy it, not this time, not with the evidence stacked like bricks, not with the truth so plainly spoken. By noon, the judge rendered his ruling. The theft claim was dismissed with prejudice. Victor Dane was found liable for wrongful termination and defamation. The court awarded damages to Anna and referred the harassment allegations for further review by the state bar. Victor didn't look angry. He looked stunned, as if the fortress he'd built from intimidation and image had crumbled under a single voice he thought wouldn't be heard. Outside, the media swarmed. Anna shielded her daughters with her arms. Jordan handled the press, offering no comment beyond the court's decision. Anna kept her head down, and then she heard him. Graham stood by the curb with his car idling. He didn't wave. He didn't call out. He simply opened the back door. Anna looked at her girls. Emma nodded, tugging gently at her coat. Sophie was already halfway to the car. Anna met Graham's eyes. For a moment, nothing passed between them but history, long, complicated, unfinished. Then she exhaled. Okay, she said. He smiled, not triumphant, not relieved. Just grateful. They drove away slowly, the courthouse shrinking in the rearview mirror. In the back seat, the girls laughed over juice boxes Graham had stashed in the center console. For the first time in weeks, the air didn't feel heavy. It felt like the beginning of something new. The building sat on the corner of 5th and Ash, weather-beaten and forgotten. For years, it had been nothing but a vacancy on Graham Whitman's property portfolio, a low-value space he'd always meant to sell, but never got around to. Now, it held a new meaning. Where others had seen a crumbling relic, Graham saw potential. Not for profit, but for healing. He called in contractors, designers, and engineers. No expense spared, no corners cut. When asked what the new structure would be, he didn't hesitate. It'll be called Harper House, he said. A space for single mothers to catch their breath and get back on their feet. He named it in honor of the judge who had given Anna a fair trial and in many ways had changed the course of her life. Anna stood in front of the construction site on a gray morning, arms crossed over a light jacket, as workers hammered and drilled around her. Graham joined her, steaming coffee in hand. You really did it, she said, half disbelief, half admiration. You helped me see what mattered, Graham replied. The least I could do was listen. Harper House opened quietly but quickly filled with stories. A woman escaping domestic violence with her newborn, another who had lost her job and housing after standing up to harassment. Each came in guarded and unsure, just like Anna had once been, and she greeted each one with warmth, professionalism, and deep understanding. Jordan Reyes hired Anna part-time at first, then full-time. She wasn't just working a job, she was becoming a lifeline. She attended client meetings, organized support groups, and even began studying for her paralegal certification. Graham watched from the sidelines, equal parts proud and awestruck. She'd transformed pain into purpose. Meanwhile, Graham became a fixture in the girls' lives. He never asked to be their father. He didn't try to buy their affection. He simply showed up at school plays, at dinners, at impromptu backyard picnics, where juice boxes were traded like currency. They called him Mr. G, a nickname Emma had started and the others adopted without question. One evening, while Anna and Jordan prepared case files in the kitchen, Graham sat on the living room floor, building a block tower with Sophie, the youngest. She looked up suddenly, head tilted. Mr. G? Yeah, Bug. Do you think it's okay if we call you Dad too? Graham blinked, his throat tightening. The blocks wobbled as his hand froze midair. He looked at her, wide-eyed, hopeful, trusting. You can call me anything you want, he said softly. But if you're calling me that, I'll do my best to earn it. Sophie smiled, simple and satisfied, and returned to her blocks like the world had shifted, and she already felt it settle. Anna overheard from the kitchen. She didn't say anything, but later that night, as they stood on the porch watching stars blink through the Denver haze, she touched Graham's hand. They love you, you know. I love them back, he said, and I love their mom. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I know. Harper House stood glowing behind them. Inside, women laughed over tea, children played, and one formerly empty space now pulsed with life. And outside, under a sky just starting to bloom with light, a new kind of family found roots. Graham had once measured value by square footage and return on investment. Now, he measured it in bedtime stories, soft laughter, and the sound of 4 little girls calling him home. 6 months later, on a corner lot just steps from the Denver County Courthouse, a new cafe opened its doors to the public. It wasn't flashy, no marble counters or gold-plated menus. But Bench Cafe, named after a quiet wooden bench outside courtroom 4B, was filled with something rarer, warmth, welcome, and a sense of home. The first thing guests saw as they stepped inside was a framed crayon drawing hanging proudly behind the register. It showed 6 smiling stick figures, 4 little girls, a tall man, and their mother, all holding hands beneath a bright yellow sun. Scribbled across the top in careful block letters was a single word: family. That drawing had once been taped to Graham Whitman's office door by a child who didn't understand lawsuits or tabloids, but understood that kindness meant something. And now that picture had found a permanent home. It was the heart of the cafe, the soul behind every pancake flipped and every story read aloud in the corner reading Nook. Graham stood behind the counter, wearing a navy apron that said Mr. G in stitched cursive. He was plating pancakes with the concentration of a Michelin chef and the joy of a man who no longer needed boardrooms to feel fulfilled. Across the cafe, Anna Ray sat at a round table, coaching a nervous young woman through an application for housing support. Since joining Jordan Reyes's nonprofit, Anna had become more than a survivor. She'd become a mentor, a voice for working-class women who had been silenced too long. Women came to Bench Cafe, not just for food, but for hope, legal guidance, and maybe a few words of hard-won wisdom from someone who had sat in their shoes. At the far end of the cafe, near the window bench filled with throw pillows and worn children's books, the 4 girls, Emma, Lily, Harper, and Sophie, sat cross-legged, reading aloud to a group of younger kids from a nearby shelter. The girls took turns, acting out voices, laughing at silly lines. They didn't notice the stares of admiration. To them, this was normal now. Emma paused mid-sentence as Sophie tapped her on the arm. "Should I give it to him now?" Emma nodded. Sophie got up and crossed the cafe with something crumpled in her hand. "Mr. G," she said shyly, tugging at Graham's apron. Graham looked down and smiled. "What do you have there, sweetheart?" Sophie unfolded a piece of paper. On it was a fresh crayon drawing, 6 stick figures under a big leafy tree. Each wore a smile. One had a pair of wings and glasses. "That's Aunt May," Sophie said, pointing to the angel floating in the sky. "She's watching us now." Graham's throat tightened. May, his sister, the only person who had ever believed in him before his life, turned to steel and skyscrapers. He'd told the girls about her once, quietly, over scrambled eggs. He hadn't realized they remembered. "She'd like this place," Sophie added with conviction. "She'd like you flipping pancakes." Graham chuckled softly, a lump forming in his throat. "I think she would too." Anna approached, sliding her arm around his waist. She looked at the drawing and rested her head briefly against his shoulder. "We should frame that one next to the first." Graham nodded. "Absolutely." Outside, the bench across the street. Yes, that bench was now painted a soft shade of teal. A bronze plaque had been installed beneath it, in honor of small voices that change big hearts. People sat there now, waiting, resting, wondering. Some came for hearings, others came just to sit. And sometimes, Graham would slip out with 2 coffees and hand one off to someone sitting there alone, just like someone had once done for him, only this time, with intention. As the cafe filled with afternoon chatter, the bell above the door jingled. An older man in a well-worn coat entered, looking out of place. He glanced around, hesitant. Is this the place where the millionaire was changed by 4 little girls? Graham turned, took off his apron, and stepped forward. No, he said with a smile. This is the place where 4 little girls helped a man remember what it meant to live. The man blinked, then smiled slowly. Then I'm in the right place. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the courthouse's silhouette, casting golden light through the cafe windows, Graham locked up and stood outside with Anna and the girls. The block was quiet, save for the sounds of a city settling into night. You came here for a zoning dispute, Anna teased, nudging him gently. You were supposed to be in and out in 20 minutes. Worst time estimate of my life, Graham said, laughing. The girls danced ahead, chasing each other down the sidewalk. Anna reached for his hand. But maybe the best detour. Graham looked at the bench across the street, then at the crayon drawings, then at the woman beside him, and the girls now calling him Dad. Definitely the best, he said. And in that still, golden moment, Graham finally understood something. He hadn't saved them. They had saved him. And it all started with a quiet voice outside room 4B. We're hungry, sir.